And to my extreme left, I have Nick Biketi, who is a political analyst. Good morning and thank you for joining us. We also have Vincent Kimosop, who is a policy analyst. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Philip Magal, who is an advocate. Gentlemen, the budget, we've discussed this pretty much throughout the whole week, but before we were speculating. Now it's no longer speculation. We're looking at facts and figures. And I'll start by, first of all, just a very general overview of what you think of this particular budget. As we look at it, it's in the dailies this morning on the Standard. We've basically broken it down. Like Zinzi has mentioned, Mitumba, we've got mobile money, diesel is also going to go up, kerosene is going to go up, and apparently this is to try and encourage Kenyans to use gas, LPG, liquid petroleum gas, more as opposed to kerosene. But let me just get an overview of your thoughts on the budget. Let me start with you, Philip.
I would say, in my estimation, is that there are good elements as well as the bad. My main concern is that it seems like Wanjiku this time has fallen fall. She's a victim, you know.
Is Wanjiku ever spared? Because I think every budget we seem to... Wanjiku
she seems to be the target. And I actually saw a comment somewhere yesterday on the social media where somebody says that touching ugali in Kenya is sacrilegious, and which is true really, because that is our mainstay. But there are some positives too. You can see that the Big Four have been put in focus, and the government hopes to finance it, which would be a win-win for each and everyone.
For everyone.
Of us. Yeah.
All right, let me go to Nick. Your thoughts on the budget?
I think for me, as the government is putting up, you see that put up more money in schools, free education. There's more money in health. But at the same time, they're taxing us heavily. So I think the government is giving with one hand and taking with the other. If this money was left in people's pockets, maybe they will still manage to do the same things they're talking about. So to the extent that you don't quite see when the attempt definitely with these sort of pumping in funds in health and education is to try and make the life better. But at the same time, if they're taxing you more heavily, then it's generally you are the same place. We're actually just matching at the same spot.
We are on the same spot.
Yes.
Vincent, we tend to look at the negative, but there must be some positives here. For instance, there's the IT sector and manufacturing. Anybody who's manufacturing locally, they have tax exemption on, bringing in their goods. We also have exemption on anybody who's doing exemption on equipment used in grain storage facilities. That is bound to push manufacturing and agriculture.
Thanks, and I think I would want to say that this is our day as economists. So at least we can confidently say and tell Kenyans that if you look at this budget in the circumstances we are in, Mike, is that it's a fairly balanced budget. And I'll tell you, we had a long electioneering period last year, meaning that we had slowed economic growth rate. The direct impact of that was the continuous miss of targets by KRA month after month. Because when you have slowed economic activities, what happens? Definitely, it impacts on the revenue projections. Then remember the droughts and then also the floods that we had. Now, all that together with heightened political atmosphere, what happened, investors tend to take a watch-and-see approach. And that directly impacts on money in circulation and also productivity overall. So here you have a cabinet secretary who is meant to finance a growing budget, and also some of the proposals that were made were not viable. Look at the interest rate cap. The direct impact of that was that it stifled lending to critical sectors, the SMEs. Look at the proposals on income tax. They are not popular politically, but then he was actually left with no options but to go for the easy targets. One of them includes the mobile transfer, because if you look at the reports from the Communications Authority on the mobile transfers, you realize even though we had elections, what happened? That area was not affected. So you are in a situation, Mike, whereby you are supposed to move, and you are supposed, the people are demanding a lot, but at the same time, the kitchen is not busy enough. So yet you have people on the table ready and waiting for dinner. So I would say that for balanced commentary, we have to contextualize the timing and when the budget was read in view of some of the tax proposals. So I would say that it calls for, I like the focus. For example, the need for us to increasingly increase the contribution of the manufacturing sector into our GDP. Mike, if you look for a long time, we've had 25% of our GDP comes from the agricultural sector. Now, the agricultural sector directly and indirectly employs 75% of our population. Just imagine 75% of your people producing 25. That is a lot of inefficiency. Now, when you look at the sectors like ICT and the multiplier effect that you have on the economy, it is therefore important that we support those sectors that the direct impact on the economy, because I can tell you people are facing it rough. So what do? You have to give on the other side and also see how do you facilitate sectors that have higher multiplier effect. That's why when you look at local manufacturing, for example, has been promoted. Because if you put your money in the livestock sector, for example, it has 4 times impact on employment on the economy. So I would say fairly, in my view, in the context the budget was presented, it's a fairly balanced budget.
Okay, let me come to you, Nick, and it's a 3 trillion budget, which of course we've concentrated on the amount, and it, by all means and standards, it's the highest that we have had as a country. But again, with inflation and with changing things, we don't expect it to be going down. It definitely goes up. However, there has been a tag on the 3 trillion, and it may not be a bad amount if it went into the right use. Now, looking at the budget and the fact that the CS had to fund that 3 trillion from somewhere, are you confident that if that 3 trillion is used well, then we are likely to reap the benefits as Wanjiko later?
Definitely. I mean, if 3 trillion will go to good use, we are confident that we will be able to see some positive changes. It is quite a good positioning. Yesterday, you see the president make some reassurance to the country. And for the first time, I had President Uhuru swear and say, Akia Mungu, nitafunga watu. And introducing the question of lifestyle. Because the biggest challenge, I'm sure the president was alive to it, that the biggest challenge in this country is use of the money. We thank God for the new constitution. Chapter 12 of the constitution, and I'm sure my colleague is here. I'm also a lawyer, the background is in law. Parliament, this time, as even the president is fighting corruption, we expect that the parliament is going to do its job because they have a role, especially when we are borrowing, they have a role to set out the terms of borrowing. They have a role to ensure the monies are being put to the right use. They have a role to continuously check how the money is being paid back. So even as we are going into this 3 trillion budget, we expect the parliament is going to play its role in checking the government.
Oversight.
The oversight role. This is the time now, especially now we're in this atmosphere of the handshake. We're in the atmosphere of the president swearing to put in people who are corrupt. Then we also expect that Parliament is going to swing in. I think they've been given a good budget. They should be among the winners. How much?
32 billion.
32 billion. And I think they even have more than the judiciary. So,
yes, they do.
So we expect that they have to now kupatia mwananchi their service. By checking.
So they've got no excuse. Finally, before we move on to the next part of the newspaper, your thoughts on the 3 trillion, and if it is put to good use, then Kenyans hopefully should feel the effect.
But I think that is better said than done, because if you look at it, one of the components goes, a huge chunk of it goes to debt servicing. Okay.
Debt servicing and the wage bill.
Yes.
The current expenses.
Yes, and then at the other end, we have a huge deficit, which the government has to work with. Basically, I'm not an economist, but I would say that, you know, even in your house, you have to live within your means. We need a lean budget, one which we can afford, one which can be sustained by our own revenue basis. Another thing is revenue collection. As much as we do complain about where the money is going to come from, I mean, the government is not doing a proper job of revenue collection. We had a scandal the other day where 2.5 billion, somebody was trying to evade paying 5.2 billion, but then what has become of the individual? Has he been charged? Has the money been recovered? Is this the trend within KRA? If you look at the other end of the spectrum, again, you come to Westage. Look at the county. We have so many redundant projects. At the national level, we again have so many redundant projects. And more importantly, what you've pointed out, the wage bill. I mean, does the government have to pay 450 billion on wages?
Yeah,
that one would have been better spent on development. Because the developmental component of this particular budget is about, I think, 32% on infrastructure, which of course is good. But then if you take all these factors and put them into consideration, what we are working with is largely, you know, like my friend Biketi said, we are jogging on the spot and we'll probably be stuck there for quite some time.
And sweating a lot, but not making any progress. Vincent wants to differ from that. Vincent, are you in disagreement?
Yes, I think I would, I look at it differently, because you also, as I saying, the budget is also, it is implemented in view of the realization, like the Vision 2030, and the Big Four is helping bring a focus. So I think it is good to look at, just look at the amount of money that we've put into infrastructure over time. Remember, you cannot be doing infrastructure throughout. There has to be, you do infrastructure, and then when the framework is in place, you now support industries and sectors that will utilize that infrastructure. And that's why you look at the SGR, for example. It's meant to address efficiency. We cannot continue putting money into SGR. Once it is there between Nairobi and Mombasa, it is important there to support industries and entities that you will utilize the framework. Why am I pointing out this? When we come to the issue of the debt, debt in itself is not a problem. The challenge is, where is your debt going to? Right. Is this debt going to productive sector? Because, Mike, it's just at an individual level. If I go borrow and I put a matatu on the road and it is earning money, when I look at my balance sheet at the end of the day, I might be reflecting a negative. But when you look at the cash flows, what if you have, if the matatu is paying, what happens? It's just a matter of time before you recoup. So the conversation on the budget, that's why I say, allow me to share this this perspective, is that it has to be looked into the context of where are we borrowing and where is this money going? Now, I agree with my colleagues on the issue of wastage. And even the CS pointed out in his budget yesterday, at the county level because of weak systems, and also at the national level. Now, I hope, and I agree with you, that we will now match correct policy proposals together with effective implementation. Now, look at this. In the last 3 months, we have the headlines have been flooded with a lot of issues of waste and corruption. Now, you see that intentional move towards dealing with corruption with increased allocation to Director of Criminal Investigation, EACC, and DPP. Now, what we now need to do is to demand accountability, as my brother has pointed out, on are we getting value for our money? Because I think it was on the Standard this week where they pointed out that the DPP has said that I have a lot of files from EACC, but the evidence they have do not actually, are not watertight for me to prosecute. So here then comes the question, what were the guys at EACC doing that are producing junk that actually the DPP is saying, I cannot prosecute? So, to deal with corruption, you need 4 things. You need political will. As my brother said that, Uhuru said, nitafunga watu. I hope hiyo itakuwa kusema na kutenda. Si kusema na kusema. So that political will is very important. Then number 2, we need very good laws and policies, and then strong systems and structures, and we address our issue of culture. Mike, as much as if we have a people who are eating, clothing, and sleeping and drinking, yet they are not producing, you have a problem in the country. When we celebrate ill-gotten wealth, and clap for Waheshimiwas who actually are corrupting us when we look at they are the ones importing bad sugar. They are the ones who are, you see, yet their weekends are being clapped for. You are in a problem.
We have a big problem. All right, as you can see, obviously matters budget, Zinzi, have flooded the headlines, and I'm sure this is a debate that we can have until the cows come home. But there's more on the daily, so we'll take a break from that. But remember, get yourself a copy of the Standard, and it has literally broken down for you some of the sectors and areas where you're likely to feel the pinch when it comes to your payments, and also areas where you can gain. But remember, just like Vincent has mentioned, let us put it into perspective. Okay, Zinzi, what else do we look at on the daily?
All right, Michael, before we can move away from the budget, one question that I have to ask Vincent, him being the economist in this specific panel, is that one person had mentioned that this specific budget pinches the middle class. When you have a country's middle class that is suppressed, what does that do to an economy?
The engine of our country, yes, of course, it's the middle class. They're the people who are borrowing, they're the people who are fueling. But also, our middle class also is actually, it is a middle class that is funded through debt, most of them. When you look at many people in the middle class, a lot of them are salary away from poverty. If you suck like 50% of them, then actually it will impact on our middle class. So that's why it is important for them to ensure that they reduce, for example, the private solution to public problems. Look at our schools. When they are not working, we take our children to private schools. Look at our roads. When our matatus are not working, we go and drive to work, and the car you're driving is actually a car that you've actually gotten on loan.
Even so security. If security is not working, you get security guard, private security guards.
That's why it is important then the conversation is that how do we ensure that we have our institutions value for our money? Because you're losing on two fronts. You're the one who is being taxed. Mike, 33 months of a year, anyone who is employed, their salaries goes to government. As in, you only have 9 months of the year to work for yourself. So you've been working for somebody for 3 months, and they are not delivering. Like I stay in, the estate I stay in, we don't get water. Yet, faithfully, Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company sends us bill every month. So you ask yourself, how this is wrong, because we therefore have to look for private solutions. So I think it is important for the middle class to sober up. They are the ones who are actually the majority of the people who will fund this budget is the middle class, yet they are in problems already.
Absolutely.
I must say this on that question about the middle class, and this is very personal. The middle class in this country is actually the biggest NSSF, because most of the middle class, first of all, is in towns. And all of us where we're coming from have people we support back at home.
True.
You're supporting your extended family, you're taking your siblings to school, plus the neighbors. So if that is an aspect that actually the government should be having in play when they want to create a heavy load onto the middle class. Because we are, or rather the middle class is the biggest social security of this country.
Absolutely.
So that's when you say what is the effect. Actually, when you look at the ripple effect, it is bigger than what you might want to, the economists will want to use numbers to determine. But especially some of us, there's a professor who did a paper from the University of Nairobi about the Luhya culture. Especially Luyas, when you've gone to school, and even when they're taking you to school, they tell you, tunakupeleka shule ili wewe nae usaidie wengine. So
you're basically insurance.
Exactly, you're basically an insurance. So basically, they should leave enough money in the pockets of the middle class to actually continue to support, because it's a culture, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yet it's the system that then suppresses Otieno.
Exactly.
So how does Otieno then work hard, make the money that he needs to do, to go back and tell the community, his society, you took me to school, now I'm taking 5 more of you to school?
The thing is this, that is why the middle class will struggle to break the ceiling to come to that top level. And now even when he's aspiring, they've told him that you cannot import A V8.
A V8, yes, because now we'll tax you hard. But anyway, a V8 is a luxury, so if you're importing a luxury vehicle, then you're going to pay for it.
But what I found to be an insult is the fact that the government, the minister clearly stated that they didn't increase the tax bracket, the income tax percentage for those who earn more than 750,000 out of public outcry. I wondered, when is it that we cried out that these people should be, the tax bracket for those people should not be increased? I mean, that is the area the government should focus on, the high earners, the industries, the individuals. So when you tell us that, you know, there was a public, I mean, that is not the public, that is the elite. That is a very small percentage of the country.
All right.
Michael, take a look at page 14 of the Standard this morning. There's a very interesting picture over there. It says, and I quote, "Now what?" One politician asks, the other one asks, "What now?" Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, that looks like Donald Trump. That hair.
Yes, that's Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un basically in one bed. And we do know that what happened the other day was historic.
The biggest summit we've been waiting for.
Yes, we've been waiting for. But it looks like after they shook hands, and we're in the season of shaking hands, which we are going to even discuss later on. But it looks like they got to a point where they're both asking each other, now that we've shook hands.
Yeah.
Arafu?
Philip, you're the advocate here. This has been the biggest meeting I think the international community has been waiting for. Trump finally came out from it, straight into the G7 minute, went for the summit, something that he said, I'll come, not come. It was a bit of back and forth.
Yes.
But now, one advocate as well had mentioned that it will take so long for Donald Trump to go back home and then go back on his word. But then again, on the other side, as much as we might hate or disagree with Donald Trump on a few things, he's done something the Obama administration couldn't do.
He's done a lot that Obama administration couldn't do, and each and every day he earns my respect. The other day I saw him speaking in one of the rallies in the US. I think he was speaking to the members of the NRA, and he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying, and he knows how to say it. When he went to the G7, basically, he's trying to he's actually making America great again. The European countries, Canada, Mexico, they're taking advantage of the weak system within US. And for the meeting they had with Kim Jong-un, I think it is a plus for the young man. Remember, now they do have nuclear weapon. They need to have the sanctions lifted. They need to open their borders and trade with the world. And this is what it offers them.
All right.
And of course, Trump is trying to show his personality as a world leader, which is what has been denied to death by the media and most of his opponents.
All right, Philip, I'll have to cut you short there because we need to take a short break and release KTN Home for Life and Style to begin. But those of us on KTN News, and if you'd like to continue with this conversation on KTN News, then all you need to do is switch over. So for KTN Home, we say goodbye. For KTN News, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, let's also review what's been happening over the week. And yeah, we are in the season of handshakes, and there was one that took place yesterday that I'd like us to discuss. Find out which one it is after the break.